Hey guys, welcome to Mock Advice Season 3. It's been like 12 years, but we're finally continuing it. We are honouring the past, but in a different way to what you might think. We're actually talking about LEGO ideas, projects that are Bionicle related today. There is no mock advice happening.
But they are mocks. They are mocks, okay?
They are mocks, so it counts. This is the guy that so many people have been like, you should do a video with CallanLoF. Well, here he is. So welcome to the show, Mr. Callan, Loaf of Bread himself, CallanLoF. Welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you. I am well rested.
Good.
And I'm ready.
Good.
That's actually a lie. But let's actually talk. But yeah, we're going to be talking about this project in a bit more detail. I have a video on my channel we can look at if you want us to cover the 4 biggest projects. But predominantly, we're going to be focused on this one because this one has some chance of becoming a set. Yeah. And there's a lot to say about that.
There's a lot to say about it. So yeah, we'll just be talking about that. Yeah, we'll be hanging out with Callan. It'll be just like old times or the times you don't remember because maybe you didn't watch those videos.
Probably.
That's right. So
that's fine.
We'll do a quick rundown of the main project we wanted to talk about today. So this is a LEGO Ideas project. So first off, you might be like, what is a LEGO idea? In which case I would say you have an idea and you make something. But there's also a website called LEGO Ideas where if a project, you post a LEGO like mock on there. If it reaches 10,000 supporters, it becomes, it gets...
Go back to Kuso.
That's right. It used to be called LEGO Kuso. Now it's called LEGO Ideas. If you got 10,000 supporters, LEGO would consider making it a set. So currently there is this Bionicle project by one Sakota, and it is called The Legend of Bionicle, celebrating 20 years of LEGO stories. And it's a really cool looking project. And it's currently on 8,398 supporters at the time of this recording, with like over 700 days left. So it's pretty close, and I want to say this thing got to like half of the supporters in like a week or something ridiculous.
Yeah, it's been a real quick climb. Yeah. So this is a very successful project for the first stage. Yeah. But of course, the second stage is the most important one. Yeah. So
and the annoying thing about that stage is it takes like ages for them to actually report back.
Oh,
so,
yeah.
This could be over so quickly, but we won't find out about it till like next year.
What's so funny now too is that but that's the thing. They have to sort through so many more projects now. I'm waiting for the inevitable boost in the next 5 years where they change it to it's going to need like 15 or 20,000 supporters. Because I have a feeling I don't know. Honestly, 10,000 they might not ever change that because it's a pretty good gauge of how many people will actually buy this. Yeah. If we produce this as a limited edition set.
Exactly. I don't know what the maths is behind 10,000, but I'm sure it's somehow related to if 10,000 people say they're going to buy it, then if that's how many people like buy the set, then it's like a financial success or something like that.
Yeah. You almost wonder, and this is a little disconnected from Sakota, but you almost wonder if they'll eventually upgrade their system to a point where instead of even doing pitches to begin with, they just have people can create projects that LEGO will pre-approve basically they'll switch the place of the stages where LEGO approves the project first, then fans can all basically pay for the project.
Oh, gotcha.
You almost wonder if they could people could see the project and they could put their money in right off the bat, and LEGO would get that money. And then if it reaches enough, LEGO could refund the money if it doesn't reach it, and then they can send them the sets via shipping, and then presumably shipping would be pre-included. That would honestly be a very interesting system for LEGO Ideas at some point. But that's not what this video is about.
That's right. So I've prepared a whole bunch of questions, which I think are some interesting topics we can discuss. So I'm going to hit you with the first question, like physically, like bam. The first question. How do we feel about the fact that this is system Bionicle? So we will, of course, like we did in the previous video, we'll make reference to some of these other more popular LEGO Ideas projects, but specifically the Sakota project. It's a system Bionicle project. How do you feel about that, Caleb? Does that excite you? Does that bore you? What are your thoughts?
It bores me. This is not what a Bionicle project should be, frankly. Okay, it's all the context. You can make LEGO System Bionicle stuff. They literally did it. They did it for 3 years, and to mixed results. The first year was not great. Second year was really great. The third year was okay. And then they just gave up. So it's never been the main appeal to Bionicle, but it's had limited success in the past. They didn't even try it for G2. It's obviously the go-to idea for a lot of people because there's so much more to work with Lego. Lego's constantly creating new pieces. They've got this new. They started it with the Mixels about a decade ago almost now. Or not quite, but it's getting up close there.
Yeah.
But the Mixels are pretty old now. They've had this joint for years now, and they've been continuing to implement them, and it's really great for a smaller scale, and it's interesting to see people try and integrate those pieces in. But to get back to the focus of the matter with Bionicle, it's so easy for people to make projects with all these new Lego pieces, and they have so much more options, and of course, Lego is what it's all about. This is a Lego idea set. People want to buy Lego sets. Making it predominantly system makes sense in that regard. But I am predominantly, with all of these ideas projects, more focused on the fact that this would possibly be the last set ever produced. I've probably said it 3 or 4 times now to like a few different people, but yeah, this would probably be the last Lego set ever produced if it were to be approved. In a perfect world, this project would not be the one that I would want. I buy it because if it came out, and I would hope that something's better than nothing, of course, which we can elaborate on that further. But in terms of what a Lego Bionicle ideas project should be, I think the focus should be on some really cool stuff, something that's really representative of Bionicle that people can immediately glob onto.
Gotcha.
And instead of, a project that's very, very rooted in the story, which is what this is.
I mean, for me, I think that I agree with a lot of what you're saying. It'd be nice, like, if this is the last Bionicle set, it'd be nice for it to be Bionicle. And even just the premise of it being like 20 years of Lego stories and a kind of an anniversary set, it'd be nice if it was a Bionicle set to really honor that. But I definitely look at it from like a marketing perspective of like, hey, if this is system, it's going to sell better because, question mark, how well does construction appeal to this current audience, this current generation? But for me, I also look at it from the perspective of like, hey, we haven't had a construction theme in a few years now. And for me, anything slightly relating to Bionicle is better than nothing. And so I'm like, look, if it has to be system, but we're getting something Bionicle related, I'm in. But I agree with you with that.
That's true.
But I also look at it from the perspective of like, there's currently a rumor. I'm not confirming this. This is just something I read online, that we're getting another theme that's akin to Clickets, the Lego jewelry theme. We're getting that next year, apparently. But also the concept of like always throughout the very beginning of Lego, pirate and castle themes and that sort of stuff will always come back and die and come back and die. And they are, to a degree, like evergreen themes that they're always going to be around, but they kind of data back and forth and change the concept a bit and let it fade for a bit and then come back. And so, like Luke Skywalker once said, no one's ever really gone. So I can't help but feel that... Gotta throw one in there. I can't help but feel that construction at least will come back. It's just currently it's not going to sell well, so they won't. So I guess I'm not looking at it from the perspective of like, if this is the last thing, I don't want it to be system. But if it was, I do agree with you. But I can't help but think that, maybe not in our lifetime. I doubt that. We're probably going to be alive another like 80 years. I'm sure something CCBS related will come out.
Honestly, in a franchise-driven world like ours, there is a distinct possibility that Bionicle could re-enter the popular culture sphere in some form. The question is whether they would screw it up or not. So looking at it from my perspective is a bit dire and maybe a little dramatic. But it's a little more than that too, because as you mentioned in my equivalent video that people will be able to see, you actually preferred another project that has a similar concept, the Grumble Bricks one, because that one has a lot of the 2001 kind of culture stuff in there. You got all the Toa, you got the Tohunga statue face thing. You got it just has a lot more stuff related to like the birth of G1. I think that's what most fans can agree is the really good stuff of Bionicle. Yeah. And so when you have something like this project where The only 2001 thing is one of those little statue things. It's a really cool mock. Again, this is like one of the coolest mocks ever. I don't want to knock it in that regard.
Yeah,
this is a really cool mock as a set concept, and also as a set of incorporating the best of Bionicle. That's where I also have a major problem with this. And if anything, with your argument of needing to do system, I think some kind of good balance between using the system and the Bionicle stuff would be better service. Then I don't think any of those projects properly do that, but it would be interesting to see something like that, people trying to mesh where they have buildable figures within a brick built context, perhaps. And actually, that's not entirely true. He kind of has this with the 2 giant robots, but of course that's the concept, that they're the giant robots as opposed to the standard Bionicle figures.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that would honestly be more interesting to me. Something that perfectly marries the two together, because this is a system set by and by. Matoro's even just a minifig. That's the idea this guy has for it.
Well, I think kind of on what you were saying, the reason I liked Grumblebrick's version more is I think both very heavily play on the nostalgia card, which is great. But I think what Grumblebricks does in a different way to what Sakota does is that his project, if you don't know anything about Bionicle, you can still look at it and be like, oh, there's a giant crab. Oh, there's a big like head that kind of looks like ruins and stuff. That's cool. But if you're a Bionicle fan, you're like, it's such a hunger head, and oh, this crab is, oh, and you know all the lore, you know. So I think that plays better into multiple different target audiences and being like, hey, this is cool to everyone. And it also kind of plays into elements of Ninjago as well, of like bold characters and these dudes who have powers over elements and are like, you know, have different personalities, and there's this huge story behind it as well. And it not being construction and it being a system-focused set, I can see a lot more people being on board with that, because a lot of the concepts of Ninjago perfectly match with Bionicle, but I guess one of the major reasons that Bionicle doesn't appeal is it's more action figure based, and kids aren't necessarily as into that, I guess. I don't know, I don't work for Lego, I'm not a marketing guy for them, I don't know why Bionicle isn't something that they're willing to put their money down on yet.
Right. Well, I would argue particularly in terms of the buildable construction stuff, and this is a bit disconnected, so I won't go on a major tangent with it, but in terms of the construction stuff, I think it's more so just Lego not moving along. They're not, to quote the great band All American Rejects and their Bionicle song for the Toei Naika, Lego is not moving along with their construction concepts. They've basically kind of stayed more or less stalemate with the same things. They've tried to implement gears with the ones before, but clearly they put too much money into the Star Wars ones. They think that those are going to sell, and they don't. So then that's why there's no more of those. They're good figures. They're actually pretty decent sets, a lot of them, the Star Wars ones. But and the Bionicle ones, they were just, I think that they were just ugly. They didn't have a great design team for the Bionicle people, I don't think, or at least they didn't have a great design vision with a lot of the way they implemented translucent parts and all that stuff. So I think it's, in terms of the marketing concept, all I'm saying is I think that it's more so a Lego issue than a market issue, where Lego doesn't know what they want to do with buildable figures in a way that's actually going to sell. So they've just given up on it for now. I think it's more so an issue where they just need to get the right people in there to be like, okay, what did Bionicle have that people liked? It had consistent design language and cool looking robots. And even if you didn't like the story, kids walked to the toy aisle and said, that robot looks awesome, I want to buy that. When I go into the toy aisle in 2016 and I see Skull Basher, I don't think I want to buy that. It's just not, it's got too many colors, and it's just not a particularly interesting looking, just cool set. That's what I think the main problem with their general market of buildable figures there is. But anyway, yeah, I totally derailed a bit there, so I apologize for that. No. But it does connect back to the idea of what's going to sell well with a project like this. Yeah. And whether you could implement, CCBS type stuff into a Lego project, a Lego Ideas project particularly, and make it something that people are going to support, because that's the interesting thing too as well. Obviously, as I said before, people are going to jump right to making system Bionicle projects because it's the easiest thing, it's the most readily thing. There's a lot of stuff you can do with that, but the amount of people that have rallied behind this concept particularly, it's fascinating that most people are not of my same mind, where they're more concerned about the buildable figures. A lot of people are just fine with getting something that feeds right back into the Bionicle stuff they love, which is kind of cool in the sense that it does celebrate the story, but as I've said before, it doesn't celebrate the things of the story that also have the paired iconic imagery with them, and that's my main problem. If you want to rebut a bit or discuss from there.
Well, actually, I'm going to do like the All-American Rejects, and when all hope is gone, I'm going to move along to the
there you
next
go.
question,
That's fair.
which actually relates to what you're saying, because what I wanted to say is how are these sets going to be different to the older System Bionicle playsets? Because we've spoken about, like you specifically made reference to having Bionicle elements in the set. You know, for example, like the earlier waves of the Lego System sets, you know, you would get Bionicle elements, like you would get the Golden Visorak, which was just straight up a Visorak, but with the scale, he was massive, you know. Or you'd get the little gold Krukan,
oh my gosh,
little guy. I know we're mentioning gold Krukans, it's just like 2015
yeah.
again.
We both have one now.
We both have one now. So that, do you think this set would benefit from, you know, perhaps one of the Makuta or Matanui robots? Both of them are maybe like a Matoran-sized build using CCBS parts, or what kind of elements from the original Lego System sets does this thing have that would work? Because technically we've seen this concept before, and I don't know about you, but I enjoyed those sets.
Yeah, and that's an interesting thing to talk about too, because I feel like you can use... I think CCBS is basically dead in the sense that as a full-on format, I don't think Lego can continue making sets in that same way and continue to sell them. I think they've realized that too, because they've been able to implement them into other Lego sets decently enough, but ultimately the Mixel joints have been just as helpful, if not more so, in terms of creating lots of posable Lego figures. And ultimately the CCBS stuff, it works better on like bigger stuff that they need some real friction. In term, like I don't think you explicitly need to call back to the old Bionicle pieces. You don't need to remake all those same molds specifically. I think it's more so a problem of Lego needs to try and create a new, and I think there's some other people have talked about this as well. The best step forward, if Lego were to try and attempt something with Construction again, would be a perfect marriage with the Mixel system, because you have these joints are pretty tight and they're pretty small, so you can get a lot of stuff done with them. And I think that's a thing that's also a little bit of a side tangent with the Lego stuff. Lego has had these Mixel joints for all these years, as I mentioned earlier, and they have done a terrible job of trying to evolve that system in conjunction with Lego, because they've literally just used the same like 6 different types of those Mixel pieces, and they haven't done any real recolors. And that's depressing, because they're really cool parts, and they only come in dark gray and light gray, and I think there might be a couple black variants, I'm not entirely sure. But it's a system that, and as you said, with implementing like a system set and having CCBS stuff mixed together, like that kind of perfect marriage I was mentioning earlier, where you can, and where like you could have a Matoran build of those two characters, that would be something really cool to see, and in a concept like this, and where it's all built off the Mixel pieces, and there's the freedom to add stuff on there that has a more Bionicle aesthetic. I mean, the possibilities are endless in terms of like just making new pieces that connect to the Mixel joints that you could make really cool small posable figures with that would fit more on a Lego scale and could be and could work compatibly well with system. It's something Lego hasn't pursued, and I've been a little frustrated by that, particularly in the sense that there's been so many sets where they've used those pieces because they're really handy, and then they just use the light gray ones, even when it looks terrible. Do you remember the Adventures Time Lego Ideas set?
The which one, sorry?
The Adventure Time one, based off the Cartoon Network show.
Yeah.
So many, not so many, but there were a few good Mixel joint pieces used in there, and they didn't recolor a one, and it looked kind of good bad on some of them.
Right.
Basically, I'm not opposed to and that's an interesting thing with this conversation, because we haven't stayed particularly on what Sakota could have done. We've more so gone with what Lego could do for Sakota in a way, like in terms of providing him. It's not ask what your Lego company can do for you, ask what you can do for your Lego company. Well, Sakota's worked with what he's had. He's made this project here, and it's worked. It does the job with what he's got. But that's kind of my point. Lego hasn't evolved the Mixel system in any way, and I think if they were smart, they really could do some cool stuff with that.
Well, I think that's a really good point, though, because we were talking about how these would be similar to the original Bionicle system sets, and we spoke about, how it did integrate with the current Bionicle style of we'll just straight up put a Vizirack in this set, and then it kind of interestingly plays with the scale. So, of course, if this came out, Lego, we've seen it in other sets before, like, for example, the pop-up book ideas set. The original version of that aesthetically looked very different. They added their own personal touches to it. They put homages to the builders on the front. They changed up the color scheme. They added a few other things. The exosuit, that looked a lot more Greeble heavy, whereas Lego said, we'll have kind of an homage to that, but we'll focus more on making it so that all these details can still be on there, but there's a lot of playability aspects to it. So it's entirely possible that Lego could make this set, but then go, well, actually, let's see how we can take another step forward. Let's see what else we can add. And they could take notes from the original system sets, the original Bionicle system sets, and say, hey, we're going to integrate the current construction stuff and put it in. And currently there is no construction stuff. So they could do, like you're saying, and add Mixel joints, but have those perfectly reflect into CCBS parts. And this set could almost be a little bit of a trial for, future things to come. They go, okay, well, how can we integrate CCBS into more system stuff so that the two kind of blend together and they don't become two very distinctly different themes, which ironically actually leads to another question, which, because like you said, we are talking a little bit more about how this set would evolve if Lego did approve it, which is perfectly good stuff to discuss. I think still relates to the original project, but the idea of Sakota's project specifically focuses very heavily on the Bionicle G1 story. It doesn't make any reference to G2. But if this was brought out, do you think Lego would focus more on G1? Would they focus at all on G2? Or would this be like a little introduction to a possible G3?
Yes.
When the Minecraft Kuso set came out, well, it was Kuso at the time, of course, now it's Lego Ideas.
It's true.
We got the little micro world for Minecraft, and then that sold really well, so they made two more. And then they went, hey, we're going to make a theme for Minecraft. So it's entirely possible that if this takes off, Lego goes, hey, maybe we should make a theme for this. So do you think any elements of G2 or even a G3 could play into this?
Potentially. In terms of what you were talking about there, I was particularly 100% in agreement, and it being the best possible outcome that Lego could take a project succeeding like this and use it as a trial run for kind of a new married integration of CCBS and Mixel joints. The way the project is designed here, Lego could literally translate it and it would probably sell just fine, and it would probably just be a one-off that Lego would be like, we got a little profit off this, now we're done. And I think that would be fine. If that were to happen. But obviously Lego does make changes when they make these projects, they finalize them, and one wonders exactly how they'll change the figures, particularly here, because of course the guy just put printing on a minifig, and that's probably the thing that excites me the least about this project, just having a minifig Matoro in there, having a little mini Tahu. And I think that's the thing that frustrates me the most about a project like this, in the sense that people have always wanted to have little minifig versions of the original 6 Toa, since of course the 3 years of Bionicle that did system type sets did not include the original 6. And that's part of the reason why the Grumble Bricks version is more interesting in that regard. But here you only get one minifig, and it's Matoro. And as important as Matoro's sacrifice is to the story, just feels kind of weak for a reunion project concept. We're getting one minifig character of a Bionicle, and it's one we already got in 2007. Just now as a minifig instead of as a slightly altered 2006 Bionicle minifigure. I know I've devolved a bit from the question there, but with the to get back a bit, the minifigs, Lego could use the characters in a concept like this, and because of course they don't have to make the set this small. That the guy's done a pretty good job of making it in a nice, succinct manner where this would kind of fit in a corner of a table or on a shelf pretty nicely and cozily, and it wouldn't be that big. But Lego could upsize it just a little bit to make slightly bigger figures if they wanted to.
For sure.
And it would be interesting. I do think that they could do that, and they could potentially wrap in other concepts for all, like, I mean, they don't even have to do this exact same 3-scene thing. They could make it a 4-scene thing, as they've liked to do, like with their Death Star sets. They have all the different compartments reflecting different scenes. They could upscale it a bit if they wanted to, if they wanted to experiment with something like that. And there definitely opens the door for more scenes you could do. In terms of practicality, particularly for this project, I really, really doubt they would do some G2 specific scene. It wouldn't make a lot of sense for what this project's trying to accomplish, and also it would suck.
I like G2.
All right. Well, maybe that's a conversation for another time, or an argument. I don't think it would work quite well with particularly with what this guy's going for, especially with people complaining about the story in G2. I don't think Lego would particularly try to incorporate that into something like this. But adding another G1 scene could happen.
No, and I think this is I think this set is very heavily playing off nostalgia. So I think going straight to G1 is definitely better. And I always look at it as, a lot of people do have that argument of like, will we ever get construction again? And I go back to the argument I had before of like, Pirates hasn't been around for a while, but it's very likely it could be coming around soon later. Or sets come back, some sets stay a bit longer than they expected, that sort of stuff. Ninjas hadn't been around for ages, and then Ninjago came back, and they're like, okay, ninjas are going to be around for a long time.
They've done techno ninjas, and they've done techno knights. Now they need to do the techno pirates. We need the combo sci-fi pirates line.
Oh, we do. That's a great idea.
Do. But that's a side comment. Sorry.
No, that's a great side comment. I want Techno Knights now. But I think that it's the case that this could very well spawn a G3. We'll have to wait and see. Who knows? I think G3 is entirely possible, but give it time. It may not be a thing that's in the next 10 years. It could be a bit longer than that. Could be a bit shorter than that. I'm not a doctor. I don't know. We'll find out.
The point being, in terms of like what you could do to add more scenes or add more G1 related stuff, there's definitely endless rooms of potential. This doesn't touch Rakshi, the 2004 stuff at all. Apparently that's the guy's favorite stuff, is 2004 through 5 stuff, but he didn't even put it in the project because he knew that wouldn't work for something like this. Because I will definitely give him, in terms of story beats, I can understand each one of these scenes being very important, but I don't think that's the strongest thing to focus on for an Ideas project. The story things, I think, as I've said before, the image, the iconic imagery and the story stuff together, because the Toa fit both those perfectly. The original 6 Toa, the Rakshi fit that pretty well as well. There's a few others. The Paraka. There's a lot of stuff that didn't make the cut in any full capacity in this set that I think would have made more interesting scenes ultimately, and for a more satisfying proof of concept. As story wise, these are definitely very important beats to hit, but if you think about it, the jump from the 2001 scene to Matoro's sacrifice is huge, and I think that's also something worth criticism. It definitely feels like something where a second scene to fill, or a fourth scene to fill the gap there for that proof of concept would really help.
Well, that's the thing, isn't it? We need the 4th scene focusing on the Paraka rap.
Yes.
And,
can we get like a little? I was thinking like some kind of system inside it. No, now Lego's trying to play around with stuff that can connect to your phone, like a tie-in app. They need to have like a tie-in app for this one, where if you press a button on the little set and your phone is connected, the Paraka rap will start playing on your phone. I think that would be a great integration into something like this.
Sakota, if you want 10,000 supporters, that's how it's done.
Come on, dude. Only 8,000? This is weak, bro.
You would have got 10,000 in a day if you'd put that
in a heartbeat.
That's right. But I think it's always cool. Jokes aside, I do love what he's done. I think this would be really cool to see as a set. But, the hypothetical situation, the quickness that this has arisen, let's say 2 days from now, this set gets the 10,000 that it needs. And then hypothetically, it stays in that limbo for a little bit of, is it going to get approved or not? I'm going to call to mind a thing that I heard from a guy who works for Lego. When I was at Brickvention in Melbourne, this guy named Kevin Arn did a talk. He's kind of like a liaison between Lugs and the Lego company, and he was sort of just talking a little bit like business about Lego. And
Explain to the folks at home what a lug is.
A lug is a Lego user group. It refers to just like if you are living, for example, in Perth, I've got Plug, which is Perth Lego user group. And basically just like once a month we meet up, we build Lego together, we just talk, we hang out, we put on conventions. So it's just your local Lego group, essentially.
Epic. That sounds awesome.
Yeah. So in this talk, he was saying that he was touching upon a lot of stuff I'd heard before, but the 2 points that I did like is one, he said Lego doesn't want to jump onto current trends, depending on what it is. And he had a picture of like Fortnite come up, and so it was like, okay, well, that makes sense. But he also said that kids don't like robots anymore, and he didn't have any pictures of Bionicle pop up, but I more or less took that as the case of like, okay, that's a little bit of an explanation for why Bionicle maybe isn't around now, or construction sort of thing. So I could see Lego making the argument of, we don't want this set approved because we don't know how well it'll sell given the current generation. But you could also make the argument of like, well, it got to the 10,000 supporters. There's a clear and very quick response from this thing. And if this set just has a little bit more of a limited release, just for the collectors out there and the people who appreciate it, it could sell. So there's that argument, what if this is a no? It's entirely possible. But like I said, I kept drawing those parallels to Ninjago, and I think this set makes some very strong parallels to it. The fact that it's system as well definitely helps. So, I don't know. What are your thoughts on that? Like, how likely do you think this is that it'll be approved?
Honestly, in terms of Lego's specification, like, particularly with something like that you've said, that they've steered away from robots in general.
Yeah.
I'd probably give this maybe a 30% at best chance of getting approved. It's kind of low, but it's not like 0% or 0.5%. It could be a niche kind of thing that they could revisit, but Lego is obviously getting more and more of these 10,000 supported projects, which means some of them they might have approved 5 years ago, just because they didn't have as much requests or resources. They'd had more resources for the fewer options they were getting. There's more and more competition these days, so if any of these Bionicle projects were to get approved, it would probably most likely be this one. I mean, honestly, I could see that maybe anything like the construction build like that Toa one probably would get disapproved almost right immediately in their heads, and then they just wait to announce it. But this one, really all the both of the two Lego built ones, I could see them deliberating a bit. But yeah, I don't find it particularly likely, particularly as you've said, the fact that they aren't focusing on robots anymore. It makes sense. I don't think I would. I don't know. I would. That's honestly something I'd be really fascinated to explore further at some other point. The idea that kids are not interested in robots more, because is the Transformers franchise really suffering that much? I almost wonder if it's I don't know if that's necessarily true, or if maybe I'm just not disconnected, or maybe I'm less connected with the 5-year-olds and the 10-year-olds these days. Right. I mean, my little brother's 10 years old. Yeah, there you go. But I mean, but to be fair, he's just as interested in Ninjago and superhero stuff as he is. He's definitely not like sold out for Bionicle just because I am. So right. So I can definitely understand that there might be some kind of demographic change where kids just don't buy those in bulk or get excited about those as much as they used to. But yeah, and obviously he didn't refer to Bionicle in any way. I think if that was their main fear for making Bionicle in the future, as opposed to the fact that they just kind of dropped the ball with G2, I'd be disappointed if that was their takeaway.
I guess that you could also look at the examples of like Overwatch and even elements of Ninjago where they do have mechs and robots in it, and those sets seem to still sell well. So it could also just be the way that you market those robots,
Right. Yeah, it's true. And in the context as well, because of course with Bionicle, it's all robots all the time. People like having mech suits, they like integration. There's lots of crossover appeal. It's something that I've kind of hated about Ninjago, just how many different things they've covered in that line. They've got motorbikes, they've got flying airships, they've got old temples with like ninjas, and if you had like a streamlined thing between two things, that would work. But then in terms of villains, they also have skeleton bad guys, they've got like rock monster bad guys, they got ghosts, they're like it's like the C.S. Lewis Chronicles of Narnia of Lego, where they basically just take from every lore possible whatever creatures they want, and they just they throw it into this line, and ultimately it's proved successful for them. So I can understand that thought process of, well, Bionicle is not something that we can particularly market because there's not much cross integration with other things that kids like. It would really suck if they tried to do some kind of crossover thing with Bionicle, which, let's be honest, it would. So it's just not built for that kind of crossover compatibility, which is of course how Lego's moved on as a company as they've continued to go on, which makes sense. It was almost a misguided concept to begin with that they even tried to bring back Bionicle, just from how the company has changed in all these years, and not really changed so much. They've grown with what worked with them historically. Bionicle is very different for what they typically did with the story focus, buildable figures. It's just always been the most unique and one of the strongest footnotes in their history, and I don't think it's something they should easily discount just because they think that kids don't like robots anymore. But you also got to look at the numbers, and the facts are that G2 didn't sell well. That's not going to look good for the next 5 years. This project is only coming out through 3 years after the line ended. So I can't believe that. Oh my gosh. To come back to the original point of the question, I don't foresee this necessarily being approved. Yeah. But I could be wrong.
I mean, I think one thing that at least gives me hope is that this is Lego's property, so they can very easily do what they please with it. In a similar way to what they did with like the exosuit when it was a classic space thing. I'm sure that makes them feel a little bit more comfortable with it, and they have a bit more liberty to change it.
They've got all the freedom.
So there's always that to look forward to.
And that is very nice because, of course, as they learned from starting franchise stuff with Star Wars to begin with, not only do they take a cut, but they also have to work around those lines and what they can do. And it's always nice to have full creative control, but unfortunately you end up with the Star Wars prequels and you end up with G2, so you always got to have the right people on as well. You got to have some double checks as well. So but that's a completely different argument. I'm sorry, I keep wanting to throw those cheap shots at G2. It's just how I'm built, man.
Everyone's entitled to an opinion. It's all good. But speaking of opinions, that's it for my questions there. And I think we've had some pretty good discussion on it. And of course, don't forget to check out the original, like kind of part 1 for this video on Callan's channel as well. I'll make sure to put a link in the description to it, so be sure to check it out. But otherwise, just before we finish, do you want to any other final thoughts on these idea projects? Anything else you want to say? And then we'll close it up.
Let's there's 4 of them. I would encourage anyone who loves Bionicle to go and look and search them out and support all of them. Any support we can put out there to show that that there are some people who would still be interested, even if it won't pay out in the next year, next 2 years, even next 10 years. It's an important line to a lot of people, and it's had a lot of success in its past, and I think Lego just needs some reminding of that. And it's important for Lego to keep an eye on some stuff like that. I'm sure they have lots of studies about the kind of toys that kids typically like to play with these days.
Totally, yeah. I think it's like you said. I'll have the links in the description to all those ideas projects. So be sure to check them out, because we can make this a reality.
Exactly. Yeah. This, as I did only put 30% on this, but you never know. This is a solid project, so I could see Lego making it.
Otherwise, that's about it. Mr. Lord of Fire, Mr. Loaf of Bread, Mr. Callan, where can people find you if they want to watch more of your content?
I'm right here on YouTube. If you put CallanLoF in your search bar, you'll find it very easily, and make lots of fun animations with my friends. Sometimes this blue boy here might even pop up as a voice actor. Yeah. So as we've mentioned before, I've got a parallel video where we more so talk about all 4 of these projects, and the in a more concise fashion we kind of talk about their merits. So yeah, you might want to check that out if you're curious about the other 4. the other 3 projects that we didn't cover.
Yeah, for 100%. All of that will be in the links in the description, even links to Callan's stuff and all that. And my social media is there too. You can check that out if you so please. Otherwise, that's it. I'm sure Callan will be on in a future podcast or something in the future. I'm more than happy to have him on again because it's been a pleasure having you on now.
Thank you, dude. This was a blast.
Thank you very much. But that's it. See you guys.
I'm a nerd.